Hello everyone, welcome back. God, this beard is getting so long. It's very, I can't wait to shave it. It's driving me insane. Welcome back. You're currently balanced on 2 small boxes of Quaker Oats and leaning up against a loaf of bread on the top of my fridge because I need to improvise. It's lockdown, woohoo! It's a lovely sunny day outside. It's been pretty miserable for the past few days, so I thought let's take advantage of this and go on a little adventure. Although it is Saturday today, so it might be a bit busy out, and as I said, it is the first sunny day in a while. However, it is also lockdown, and we're in the midst of a global pandemic, so there are still a lot of people inside. Shops still aren't open, and every day is kind of a weekend for some people who've been furloughed or lost their jobs or whatever. Very sad situation for those people. But today we're going to go to Tower Hamlets Cemetery Park. Now, Tower Hamlets Cemetery Park is one of the Magnificent 7 cemeteries. Now, if you're American, you might be thinking of the 1960s Western film. That's not it. It's nothing to do with that. And it's also nothing to do with the remake with Chris Pratt and Denzel Washington. So forget about that. The Magnificent 7 are a group of cemeteries, 7 cemeteries, obviously. The most famous of which being Highgate Cemetery, which you may have heard of. It's definitely the most famous. It's in North London in Highgate, surprisingly. Lots of famous people buried there, including Karl Marx. There are also, I want to name other famous people who are buried there, but I'm not 100% sure they are, so I'm not going to. But if you look up Highgate Cemetery, you will be able to see that, who is buried there. But one of those Magnificent 7 cemeteries is Tower Hamlets Cemetery, which is now a park, public park, because people aren't buried there anymore. But I'll quickly give a background on this before we head off. So it was opened in 1841, and around this time, London was dramatically increasing its population by huge numbers. It was drastically overpopulated, especially here in East London. Tower Hamlets is in East London, which is historically a very poor part of London. This is, East End is, we're talking Jack the Ripper, if you get that image in your head. Whitechapel is in the East End. We're talking the Krays, the Kray twins. So this is historically, back in the Victorian era, would have been a very, very poor area. And at this time, people were buried, when they died, they were buried in churchyards or burial yards. We've all seen it, especially here in the UK. You go to a small town or a small village, there'll be a church with a graveyard or a burial yard, and people were just buried there, nice and simple. Obviously, religious times as well, you get buried in your local church where you go every Sunday, maybe alongside your family as well. But in London, in the 19th century, as the population was expanding dramatically, especially with such a large percentage of the population living in very poor conditions and having very poor health, lots of people were dying, and there was nowhere to bury them all. There are lots and lots of churches in London with lots and lots of churchyards, but it was just too much. There were too many people needing to be buried that couldn't fit into these churchyards. And these churchyards aren't big. They're not massive, most of them. And it was getting to the point where, grave diggers would go and dig graves for people to be buried, and they'd end up digging someone else up. They would dig a hole for the grave, and there would already be a body in there. And it was getting just awful. The people that lived near these churches are in urban areas. The people that would live next door to the churches would have to put up with this awful smell of decomposing flesh, basically, and the rats as well. I mean, this is London in the 19th century, so rats and bad smells were fairly normal, but it was pretty bad, and it got so bad to the point where the decomposing bodies sort of, I don't know how to explain it, but the waste from these decomposing bodies, everything that's coming off of the body, ended up getting into the water supply, which people were obviously drinking. It got into the river as well. People were obviously drinking this water with, you know, all sorts of illnesses, and you know, you wouldn't want to drink water that a dead body has been in, would you? So people were getting very sick, and so the councils decided, right, we need to find a large open space where we can bury lots of people. So they built these magnificent seven cemeteries, and today we're going to Tower Hamlets Cemetery Park. Now it's a park. No longer, people are no longer buried there, but it's now a public park where you can go and walk your dog or walk yourself, which is what I'm going to do.
Drop it. Drop. Good boy. Good boy. Good. Drop it. Good. Drop it.
As you can see, it's pretty overgrown and neglected. There's broken headstones and headstones that clearly haven't been looked after and maintained. This cemetery fell into disrepair not long after it opened, and became extremely neglected, as you can see. And that wasn't helped by World War II, when the cemetery was bombed, along with the rest of London, obviously. So there are some, I can't see any around here, but there are some headstones that are damaged, which could be bomb damage, but could also be other things. I like that a lot of these headstones say who fell asleep. It's a very romantic and peaceful way of saying they died. there are about 350,000 people buried here. Many, or most, were working class, ordinary working class people. Many from the local area, some not. Many, in many cases, multiple people buried in the same grave, as you can see on most of these headstones. In most cases, they're family members, but in some cases, they're not. They might have a loose connection, or they might not be connected whatsoever. It's also rumoured that some graves were up to 12 metres deep and could hold up to 30 people very close together. A lot of these stones are so old that the names have rubbed off. I don't know about these ones here. They might have always been blank. But I've seen some where the names have clearly worn off over time. Like this one here, you can see the engravings very faintly. So this is the tomb of Joseph Westwood, who ran a shipbuilding company that later became known as Thames Iron Works. Now, the workers from Thames Iron Works created a football club known as Thames Iron Works Football Club that later became known as West Ham Football Club. So going by the maps, I believe this is where one of the chapels was. There were 2 chapels in the cemetery. I think one of them was here, but both were badly damaged during the Second World War from bombing raids. So they tore both of them down a little while later. So here's the War Memorial for the First World War and the Second World War. These are all soldiers that died. Look how young they are. Age 17. 19. And I'm back. I was gone for quite a long time, actually. I was gone for about... I was in the park for about 2 hours. Maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. I filmed a lot on my camera because there is... What you can't see is that the park is huge. It's really big. And there's lots more to it than I can tell you in this one short video. Well, it's probably not very short by now, but still. So I took my camera along and I filmed a load of stuff because I want to do a long form, more in-depth video about the park, the cemetery. And I'd like to do one for each of the Magnificent Seven. But my camera, the SD card filled up, which was kind of expected because I still had photos from my holiday to the Deep South in 2017, which was 3 years ago now. So probably should have cleared it first, but I got plenty of footage and I will probably go back to film some more, and that will be up at some point in the future. Not for a while yet, probably, because it requires some editing and voiceovers and so on, and research. But in the meantime, I hope this video was interesting, and I hope you liked it.